That is what Hygieia is asking. That is what Hygieia is offering. Now, what that looks like, honestly, any of the work that you want to do with any of these asteroid goddesses, what that looks like largely is much more simple than you might imagine. A lot of it is pondering on the energy of that particular asteroid goddess, inviting yourself to recognize what it feels like, and then doing what makes sense in that moment. Well, not even what makes sense. It's more like what comes forward, what intuitively, instinctively makes sense.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Berenger, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kayelee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. This is Kayelee Rose, one of your co-hosts, and in a break from what is normal, I do not have Julie or Jan here with me today, which is kind of sad, but so goes life sometimes. This particular episode is going to be just a really quick overview, maybe a few deeper dives into the year ahead astrologically, but from the perspective of resonant astrology, which if you haven't listened to previous episodes and picked up what resonant astrology is, it's my astrological system that I've developed through my research and study and work with clients and through collaboration with God and Goddess. It is the current culmination of all of my astrological work and much of my other types of work as well. And it's kind of terrifying and extremely humbling and just amazing to me to be able to share it with the world. It's still in process. It's still unfolding. I don't have every piece in place in this exact moment, but it is gaining momentum. The downloads are coming faster. The insights are coming faster. And so this is just a really beautiful period of time in my life, but it also feels like a very beautiful period of time just for everybody, where so much more information is coming forward about the feminine and the masculine even, and the dance between them. But it's not just information. It's becoming more of a lived experience, more of a felt sense, more of a return to the wisdom that's in our own bodies, because the fabric of the universe is made up of masculine and feminine energy. And our bodies, our spirits, our minds, every bit of us is also woven from that cloth, from that fabric. It is made up of threads of masculine and feminine energy, to use a weaving metaphor that I know Julie loves, the concept of weaving as it pertains to the feminine, but you can't truly separate the masculine and the feminine. They are in true partnership. And so this astrology system, resonant astrology, it first serves the purpose of centering feminine energy, because in so many systems in the world today, feminine has been completely deleted or hidden or treated as not important and not valuable. And to a certain extent, that is even true of astrology. And so resonant astrology is tweaking that, fixing that, adjusting that, righting that wrong so that the feminine can be centered. But that's not the end of it. That's not the be all end all of the system, because it doesn't make sense. And this is something that I can go on and on and on about and get super, super passionate about. And I know Julie and Jan can too, but just this idea that the feminine has been suppressed or treated negatively for so long, and now it's the masculine's turn. Let's just trash on the masculine. That is not the goal. That is not what Feminine Alchemist is about. And that's also not what resonant astrology is about. It's about returning to the natural dance between masculine and feminine energy. The beautiful, powerful, potent partnership of masculine and feminine energy. And we currently live in a period of time where there's still a lot of suppression of the feminine. So our emphasis does tend to be on the feminine. And that may need to shift. Maybe not in the work of the podcast, but in my own work with Resonant Astrology. And I can't speak to Julie and Jayanne. Like I'd rather they speak for themselves in that arena. The masculine in some ways is starting to be repressed. And so there may come a time when there needs to be more of a focus on the masculine. But what I really am hoping for is that instead of focusing on one or the other, we get to a point where we can focus on living both in that beautiful dance, because there's no longer major issues of suppression or discounting on either side. Anyway, a whole lot just to introduce this idea of resonant astrology. And Julie and Jayanne did a beautiful job with the astrology forecast for this year. I couldn't participate because life happened. So this is my opportunity to just share a little bit of my thoughts for this year through that lens of resonant astrology. My hope is that as you listen to that forecast episode that Julie and Jayanne did, and then listen to this forecast episode, that you will find some hope and some little nuggets of like, okay, what can I do? Because sometimes the energy can feel very overwhelming. I know I've felt that way the past few days, where it's like, all these big energies are unleashed around me and inside of me, and even more coming potentially. And oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? So my hope is that I can offer you some anchor points for like, what can you actually do? You yourself, when everything is swirling around you or even inside of you, what is something that can be a grounding point for you? So before we dive into the bulk of this episode, I just want to give you some advice on some episodes to listen to, podcast episodes to listen to if you haven't already listened to them, because this particular episode may not make a lot of sense to you if you haven't listened to the ones that I'm about to recommend first. So that astrology forecast for this year, 2026, that Julie and Jayanne did, that's episode number 77. That's definitely one you're going to want to listen to. But also, our whole series on the asteroid goddesses would be really valuable for you to listen to, for this to all be something that you can take home for yourself and utilize yourself. So the intro to the asteroid goddesses series is episode number 61. And then we have the episode for Pallas, or Pallas Athena, which was number 64, Ceres, which was number 66, Vesta, which was episode 69, Hygieia, which was episode 74, Juno, which was episode 75, and then last but not least, the episode that will help you understand the concept of resonant astrology and to be able to use some of this material more fully for yourself is episode number 26, which was my birthday episode, where I talked about resonant astrology, where I spoke about it for the first time in a very public way with this platform of the Feminine Alchemy podcast. So stop listening to this if you have not listened to those other podcasts. And now let's talk about the year ahead through the lens of primarily the asteroid goddesses, because in resonant astrology, 4 of the asteroid goddesses are elevated to a place of rulership, meaning that they have domain over, they rule over a sign and house, which is a big break from what most of astrology has done with those asteroid goddesses. And then we'll also talk about Black Moon Lilith and Eve Point, which they make up the feminine power line. And we'll even do a little bit of an exploration with White Moon Selene, which will be exciting. So when I was preparing for this, I got really bogged down for a while in like all the details of like, okay, Pallas is going to be conjunct Venus on this day at this degree, and Vesta is going to be doing this on this day at this degree. And then I realized like, it's not going to be that valuable to any of you for me to just give you this list of like, okay, here's all the things that Juno, Pallas, Ceres, Vesta, and Hygieia are up to throughout the entire year. So I invited myself, because I need reminders too, I invited myself to slow down and to take the data and take the logic and allow it to settle in my body and allow the intuition and the instinct to come forward. This offering is going to be just a few highlights on what those asteroid goddesses are doing, and then a little bit of a soapbox when it comes to Black Moon Lilith, Eve Point, and White Moon Selene. And it's all going to be relevant to your lived experience. So let's begin with Juno. Juno, that sacred wife, that energy of partnership, of legality, of commitment. And what am I going to be committed to, and how am I going to create boundaries and agreements around that? The ruler of Libra in Resonant Astrology and the 7th house. So Juno will start the year in Capricorn and end the year in Aquarius. And each of these asteroid goddesses does have a retrograde period, and there is this sense of that energy, her energy, being directed more inward in this reviewing and revising capacity when one of the asteroid goddesses is retrograde. So that's not different from how the personal planets feel when retrograde. You might not feel the asteroid goddesses quite as strongly because they are a little further out from the personal planets, but you will probably feel them more strongly than, say, Saturn onward, because those planets are further out than the asteroids. So Juno, hanging out in Capricorn and Aquarius, will be retrograde from June 6th through September 16th. So there'll be this more internal, like, okay, what are my commitments? What do I want to be yoked with? And how do I want to be yoked with it? And how do I want to have balance and fairness? And how will I deal with possible betrayal or imbalances that need to be righted when it comes to Aquarius and Capricorn energy? So my social circle, social media, internet, the collective service, but also things like my reputation and business, or the things that I'm building that I want to have in the long term. And Juno, one particular conjunction of note that you might want to pay attention to is that she will be conjunct the North Node at 21 degrees 25 minutes Aquarius on December 26th. So December 26th, 2026 is a ways away. But that North Node is, okay, where are we heading? What's the highest calling for us in the collective of Aquarius, in the let's do things differently in a way that's good for all of us instead of just good for some of us? And Juno is adding that element of like, let's really commit to that. Let's really commit to bringing about partnerships and commitments that serve all of us and elevate all of humanity. And you can really tap into that energy around December 26th. So if you have some desire, something burning within you along those lines around December 26th, the energy is going to be extremely supportive of that. All right, let's talk about Pallas for a little bit. So Pallas is not in a place of rulership in resonant astrology, but she's still incredibly significant. She can be a key player when it comes to starting on your heroine's journey or multiple heroine's journeys, because you don't usually just have one heroine's journey in your life. You might have one or two really big ones, perhaps, but there are much smaller ones as well that are just as significant. Anyway, Pallas or Pallas Athena will start the year in Aquarius, move through Pisces, and end the year in Aries. So Pallas has a lot to do with being able to see patterns that other people can't, creative problem solving. She's this fascinating conjunction of femininity and masculinity, and she can lean a little bit more towards the masculine, but that's part of what makes her particular brand of creative, strategic problem solving work. And so there may be this coming forward of like, okay, patterns that we didn't see before when it comes to Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries energy. So from the collective to the transcendent to the personal, from humanity to all of the universe to me and my body. What are patterns between those things that maybe we've not noticed before? and how can we creatively solve problems that might be coming up between those different facets of our lives. Something really interesting to note is that June 9th and 10th, there's going to be a conjunction of the moon, Pallas, Vesta, and Saturn, and that will be taking place from 11 to 13 degrees of Aries. And when I look at that, and when I feel into that energy, what comes to mind is very much this sense of like, okay, we've got two very, very feminine players in the moon and Vesta. We've got Pallas, who very often acts as a protector of the feminine, who can lean a little masculine, who is able to creatively problem solve, to bridge any gap there may be between masculine and feminine energy. And then we've got Saturn, who's like, okay, reality checks everywhere, all the reality checks, all the karma, all the timing, all the integrity. And so what that says to me is like, okay, maybe the feminine is going to become even more embodied and more real and more a part of our lives. Maybe it's time. Maybe the balance of time has tipped to where there's going to be this outpouring of understanding the feminine and understanding how the feminine and the masculine can work together on a collective level, not just on the personal level, but all of society. I'm really excited to see how that might play out. And it may not be, in fact, it probably won't be a matter of like, oh, some gigantic event happens on June 9th or 10th. It's probably more things are building and that may be a tipping point. Or it could be some dramatic event that occurs, but that is something to keep your eye on and just notice what you notice. So let's move on to Ceres, that epitome of the mother, that epitome of the grain goddess, I guess would be good. Connections to food and food supply, connections to life cycles, death and birth, nourishment, nurturing. How are you nourishing yourself? How are you nurturing yourself? And how do you nourish and nurture other people? She'll start the year in Aries, and in May, she'll move into Gemini, and August into Cancer, and end the year retrograde in Cancer. So that nurturer and nourisher, that ruler of Cancer and the fourth house in Resonant Astrology, will be inviting us to examine, to feel into, to notice how we approach nourishment and nurturing in ourselves, in our bodies, in how we communicate with other people, and how we deal with information and logistics, how we interact with our neighborhood, our community that's close to us physically, as well as the community that we've created a little neighborhood with in the online space. And then how are we nourishing and nurturing the earth, our connection to the earth, our connection to the mother, the divine feminine, the feminine, however you want to phrase it, but also our own mothers and our own capacity for mothering, whether we are our mothers or not, whether we are female or not. And something really interesting that will happen with Ceres is that she will be conjunct Chiron on February 26th. So coming up really soon, February 26th, 2026. I just noticed a pattern looking at my notes. The Juno conjunction with the North Node is December 26th, and the Ceres conjunction with Chiron is February 26th. Both in 2026. I don't know. There may be something there. There may not be, but that just stood out to me really strongly looking down at my notes. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Ceres will be conjunct Chiron at 23 degrees, 56 minutes. Aries. Yeah, it would be Aries on February 26th. So I know that in the forecast episode that Julia and Jayan did, there was talk of mother wounds and tending to our mother wounds. I would say that this particular conjunction is lending itself towards that as well. What wounds do we have around being nurtured and nourished, not being nurtured and nourished in the way that we needed? And are we going to advocate for our own needs and take responsibility for reparenting ourselves? Because our parents can't be the parents that we need now as adults. Let me rephrase that. Our parents can't go back in time and be the parents that we needed in the ways that they weren't able to. So they could show up perfectly now, but they can't undo the past. And honestly, they can't show up perfectly now. Like that's an illusion. And it's not their job to show up perfectly for us. It's their job to do their best. So each of us has an opportunity to reckon, if we will, with whatever pain we may still be holding, whatever anger, whatever rage we may still be holding towards our mothers as individuals, but also towards our mothers as symbols of an archetype. That mother archetype, that divine feminine as well, and the earth. Can we reconcile anger, rage, whatever we may be feeling, whatever violence may exist or have existed between us and the earth mother, the earth on which we stand, the earth that sustains us all? Are we going to look at that as individuals and collectively? That's the invitation there, one of the invitations there, because with everything astrology, there are many layers, and no one human being can parse out all the truth in one conjunction, in one energy. But this is what feels relevant here and now. So that's what I'll leave you with for Ceres. Let's talk now about Vesta. Radiant Vesta, the hostess, but also the keeper of the sacred flame, the keeper of hope and vitality of spirit. She starts the year in Capricorn. In March, she will move into Pisces, and in May, she'll move into Aries and end the year in Aries. She does have a retrograde period that will be October 25th. She'll go retrograde at 27 degrees of Aries and be retrograde until November 29th, where she'll emerge direct at 12 degrees Aries. So what that tells me is that Vesta's offering us this opportunity to really to our inner flame of hope and like, why do I keep going? Why am I here? With all that Aries energy, with that retrograde motion, it's internal, it's me, it's what's my internal world and how it's affecting my body. And how am I going to take action on that? How do I take action on what sets my soul on fire, on what makes me feel alive? How can I do that? How will I do that? And that motion, Capricorn, Pisces, Aries, she'll be moving that way through the year. Capricorn offers a reality check. Pisces offers a universal perspective and intuitive insight. And Aries is like, okay, let's bring that home to the self. How can I keep my fire lit? And how is that actually an act of service to everyone and everything around me? That one of the most selfless things that you or I can do is to lean into what keeps our soul alive. That's Vesta. That's the offering of Vesta and the initiation of Vesta, especially this year. All right, last of the asteroid goddesses that we focused on in Resonant Astrology as well as in Feminine Alchemist, Hygieia. Hygieia. That connection to health and holistic well-being, ruler of Virgo and the sixth house. She began the year in Gemini and retrograde, and she will move direct on Valentine's Day, actually, and move into Cancer in April 5th, and then into Virgo on October 8th. And then she'll end the year in Virgo. So that holistic healer is inviting a reviewing and revising of how we think. Like, examine how you think. Think about how you think. And is it serving your well-being, or are there some tweaks that you need to make? That's the question to all of us, not just you, all of us, every single one of us. Then she moves into the space of, okay, nurturing, emotions, intuition. Are we attending to the details of that? How are we doing that in a way that holistically serves well-being? And then when she moves into Virgo, into her place of rulership, there is this amplification of purification. Can I purify my body, my life? Will we collectively purify? And what I mean by that isn't let's deny the things that we have labeled bad and let's over exaggerate and inflate the things that we have labeled good. It's okay, here's a wound and it's causing some issues. So let's cleanse the wound. And by cleanse the wound, I mean, let's remove the shame. That's the poison in any wound, physical, mental, emotional. It's this energy, this imprint, this ick that is shame, this ick that is, I am bad. That's shame. And when we cleanse a wound, we are removing the shame from that wound. We're not labeling the wound as bad or a problem. We're saying, the fact that I believe I am somehow bad, the fact that I am feeling shameful, or I am living in this space of shame, that's the poison. And if we remove the poison, the wound can heal. It may not heal exactly the way we want it to. And heal usually means integration, not necessarily removal. But Hygieia is here this year, always, but definitely this year, to say, hey, I need you to think about how you talk to yourself. All of you, every single one of you, think about how you talk to yourselves. What's your inner voice like? And how do you tend to your emotions and to your intuition? And is there shame in it? Are you amplifying shame? Are you planting shame? Let's go in and let's cleanse it. Let's purify it. That is what Hygieia is asking. That is what Hygieia is offering. Now, what that looks like, honestly, any of the work that you want to do with any of these asteroid goddesses, what that looks like largely is much more simple than you might imagine. A lot of it is pondering on the energy of that particular asteroid goddess, inviting yourself to recognize what it feels like, and then doing what makes sense in that moment. Well, not even what makes sense. It's more like what comes forward, what intuitively, instinctively makes sense. And yeah, there can be some logic to it. We don't want to cut out logic. Logic is valuable, but not at the expense of intuition. They're partners, and insight and observation. Like they're partners with intuition. And honestly, they're not really separate. Just like the masculine and the feminine aren't actually separate. The illusion is that everything is separate. The reality is that duality is unity and unity is duality. So I'll let you sit with that paradox. But anyway, a great place to start if you're feeling a little bit lost is reconnecting with your own body and with the outside world as far as nature goes. Going outside and listening to what you hear and smelling what you can smell, and reawakening that connection with your body and with your senses. Journaling is another fantastic way. Like all the simple tools are probably the most powerful tools for working with these energies. And so it's a matter of like, okay, will I do the pioneering thing? Will I do the beginner's mindset thing? Because there is a lot of Aries energy. So I'll speak to Aries for just a minute. Aries energy is very beginner's mindset. Like I don't have to know the how. I'm just going to go do it. It's kind of childlike in some ways, in a good way. And so will you do the thing that seems so simple and easy and keep doing it? And be gentle with yourself when you stop doing it inevitably and then start it up again. Will you do the simple thing? Will you allow that effort to compound and bring you interest that is glorious? Because that's the full round of the zodiac, if we're honest. It's Aries all the way through to Pisces, and Aries again. It's, will I plant the seed and tend it through all the thing, trusting that even if the seed doesn't grow in the way that I anticipated, that there are fruits out there. There are fruits for you out there in the universe, because we're all connected. And so whether you don't obviously reap the benefits of the effort, somewhere, something, somehow, there is a benefit to your efforts. And as something, somewhere, somehow is elevated or made more whole, that you become more whole also. That's the faith, the trust of the zodiacal process. All right. Didn't know we were going to go there, but that was fun. Okay. So let's now talk about Black Moon Lilith and the Eve point, that feminine power line. Yeah, I can go on and on and on about Black Moon Lilith and Eve point. Eve point is unique to my research and to my work, maybe not in concept wholly, but in being recognized and named and brought into a system. Yes. So there's a lot of misinformation about Black Moon Lilith and White Moon Selene in the online space and in the astrological community, actually, which I have found really surprising. Not the entire astrological community by any means, but I'm astonished by the number of like established astrologers who will say somewhere on their website that Black Moon Lilith is the apogee of the moon, so the point on the moon's orbit that's farthest from the Earth, and that White Moon Selene is the perigee of the moon's orbit, which means it's the point on the moon's orbital path that is closest to the Earth. So perigee, closest to the Earth, apogee, farthest from the Earth. But that's not true, and it kills me, especially when I see somebody say that white moon Selene is the perigee, while in the same copy on the same page, however you want to phrase it, they also say that white moon Selene has a 7-year cycle and she spends approximately 7 months in each sign. Like, those two things are not possible because the apogee and the perigee, yes, they're mathematical points. They have to do with the moon's orbital path at any given moment, and where on that orbital path is furthest from the earth and closest to the earth. And the moon is not always at either of those points. And those points are constantly shifting. So let's tease this out really quick before we go into like why this matters for this year and why this matters for you. White moon Selene is actually a hypothetical second moon of the earth. She's not the perigee. She's the hypothetical second moon of the earth. So she's not connected to our moon's orbit at all, or orbital path. So that leaves an empty space of the perigee. Like, what's in the perigee? What's at the point closest? We've got Black Moon Lilith at the apogee. Eve point is what I have called the perigee. And together, Black Moon Lilith and Eve point essentially make up this axis of power, feminine power, and integrating the feminine, where there are elements of rejection of the masculine and rejection of the feminine. And there are elements of embracing the masculine and embracing the feminine. There's the bad girl energy and the whore, the archetypal whore, but there's also quote unquote good girl energy and the archetype of the Madonna, and so many things related to culture and what we have ingrained in us culturally around what it is to be feminine, what it is to be a woman, and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And when we come to a place of recognizing all those different things and recognizing that the quote unquote bad girl and the quote unquote good girl are actually the same girl, that duality and unity and duality thing, that they're the same girl, and that the wholeness of the girl, the woman, the feminine is powerful. And good in the sense that it is meant to be there, not good in the sense that someone told you it was right or wrong. Good in the sense that at the level of what makes up the entire universe, her wholeness is supposed to be there, and so is good. That's what I mean by that. Anyway, then White Moon Selene in my research seems to show up again and again and again as how people journey to connecting to the concept of the divine feminine and the protection and love that is available there. So during this year, White Moon Selene, that connection to the divine feminine, that journey of experiencing, opening up to, getting to know, fully embracing the divine feminine, whether you think of that as purely an energy or whether you think of it as an actual deity or deities, White Moon Selene will be moving through Leo, Virgo, and Libra on her predictable 7-year cycle. That powerful number 7. Spending approximately 7 months in each sign, there's this sense of, okay, the divine feminine is going to ask us to lean into our inner child and into our inner maiden and into our inner wife. And in doing that, we will get to know her better. Like, that's the invitation from the divine feminine for this year, or an invitation from her, because we each receive personalized invitations as well. But collectively, Leo, inner child, Virgo, that maiden wife. And that's archetypal wife, not just like the concept of this woman is married to this man, therefore she is a wife. Like, it's the archetypal wife, archetypal partner. And that is where White Moon Selene will be. Black Moon Lilith and Eve point, they are this axis of like, okay, here's where your serious shadow work opportunities are going to lie for the year. They're going to lie with Black Moon Lilith, the archetypal bad girl, moving through Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Capricorn. And Eve point, the archetypical good girl, moving through Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer. So there's an entire half of the zodiac in this year that will be somehow involved in exploring feminine power, exploring what has been pushed into the shadow, what has been denied, what has been vilified, or what we've labeled as I'm not good enough to be that, so I have to hide that away in myself. And questions of, can I trust the feminine? Can I trust the masculine? Which one am I going to trust? Can I trust both? All of those will be playing out through Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. Shadow work opportunities, integration opportunities around worth, especially because of Scorpio and Taurus. Knowledge, the idea of knowledge and wisdom because of Gemini and Sagittarius, and then belonging and stewardship for Cancer and Capricorn. Shadow work around worth in the world, in what I do, worth in my soul that cannot be changed, knowledge and wisdom and what's the difference and how are they the same, belonging and stewardship, all of that. Like, look for words, feelings, sensations around those topics that make you feel like I gotta go numb out now. I gotta go eat junk. I gotta go scroll Instagram. I gotta go mindlessly do whatever, whether it's something that you would label as bad or label as good, whatever it is that you go to when you don't want to feel, don't want to acknowledge things, like words and feelings that lead you to that. Those are opportunities for shadow work, and they'll especially be coming up around the Scorpio-Taurus axis, the Sagittarius-Gemini axis, and the Capricorn-Cancer axis. So if you want some guidance on shadow work, we do have a shadow work episode where we talk about like, okay, how can you do some shadow work? How can you hold space for yourself as you do shadow work, as you integrate things that you've cut off for one reason or another? And that is what feels like most important for me to share about this 2026 year through the lens of resonant astrology. Like, I could go on and on and on. I could go way more in depth, but this feels like what needs to be left here as an offering to you all. So take what makes sense and feels good to you, leave what isn't for you or it isn't the right time for, and always, always, always check in with yourself. Check in with your own inner knowing and check in with whatever you have labeled your higher power, whether that's universe, whether that's a specific name, whether that's God or goddess or both, and check in with your body and your connection to the earth as you ponder all of these things. And I invite you, as you ponder the things that I've said, and as you connect with your body, your soul, your higher power, the earth, I invite you to write down what comes to mind as well as what sensations come up. And that there can be a personal map for you for how to move through these energies and how to steward them well and to learn and grow from them and also rest in them. Because it's not just about learning and growth. There's also rest and integration. So with that fire hose that I just sprayed you all with, I hope that you have a wonderful week and you'll be hearing from Jan and Julie and I all together again soon. Thanks again for listening. Sending you so, so much love.